Hi, and welcome to the final installment of the version 1 SAM Teams Microsoft licensing update for 2022, the month of December. So I'll kick things off, everybody, and just kind of give some of the updates that Microsoft have announced there just yesterday. So not a huge amount of updates really to report on this month's product terms. We can see the universal license terms for online services have changed slightly to include a new note, which basically says that you can't mine cryptocurrency without Microsoft's prior written approval. What the logic is behind that, who knows? Perhaps it's to do Microsoft's, green credentials in data centers, or perhaps there's another motive behind that one. Also on Azure DevOps Server 2022, as we approach the launch of that product, we've seen Microsoft update their support terms for that set of online services. And then finally, you may be familiar with the fact that certain Microsoft online services provide voice and text communications, and they're what we refer to, or Microsoft, should I say, refer to as communication services. So there was a brief notice in the product terms with just more of a clarification that state that any applicable taxes or fees will apply, or that they're included, should I say, and that they may vary from country to country. So for the month of December, not a huge amount of interesting updates on the product terms. There were, however, some changes that snuck in since the last update we recorded and since our last blog that we pushed out. And I think towards the end of November, we saw a number of updates on BizTalk, SQL Server, as well as Azure. So, Richard, I know you've had a look at the BizTalk changes. So, anything interesting to report on that front?
Yes, Carl. On the B stock front, this change is actually quite significant, I think, for some professionals and for our clients as well. Essentially, Microsoft updated the license model terms to require you to have active SA when you're licensing BizTalk with the individual virtual OSC license metrics. So when you're licensing BizTalk, just a little background here, under the per core license model, you have two options. You either license the physical core and the server, or you license each individual virtual OSC. Now, with BizTalk Server 2020, there was no prerequisite to have active SA if you wanted to license per virtual OSC. There are obviously some minimums, not too dissimilar from SQL, where you have to license with a minimum of 4 cores per VM. And obviously, there are also benefits of having SA with BizTalk, such as your license mobility. But another one is if you have SA, you can license the physical host, and allows you to deploy an unlimited number of BizTalk servers or BizTalk VMs on that host, right? However, with this new change, software assurance is now required if you want to license each virtual OSC. So you can't just purchase without SA any longer to license your BizTalk server under that model. So it is a significant change, and it will mean there's a bit of an extra expense there to our clients going forward.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I think another good example of where investment in software assurance needs to be closely examined, particularly with
Mhm.
BizTalk, because I think from my experience, what I've often found with BizTalk is that as a license or as a product, customers can often sit on the same version for a long period of
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
So you've seen scenarios where they might not invest in software asset management, or sorry, in software assurance, should I say, for that particular reason. So that's an interesting update.
I guess that kind of leads me on nicely then to when Richard was talking, and it really sounds like BizTalk as well is aligning with kind of the licensing models that we've seen for SQL Server. And
Mm.
Carl, yeah, just as you were saying, towards the latter end of November, like just say kind of mid-month, we saw like the eventual general availability of SQL Server 2022. And look, there's a whole lot going on like with SQL Server 2022. But for the purposes of like just focusing solely on the product terms today, and what's kind of been applied to the SQL Server table of contents is that there's the additional kind of software assurance benefits that what jumps out is what's been applied to container licensing. So essentially, if you have a SQL Server kind of containers in a virtual OSC with no software assurance, you are to treat every container within that virtual OSC like a virtual OSC. It's considered like a hardware kind of thread, etc. But the software assurance benefit that you get with SQL Server is that you can have an unlimited number of running containers in a virtual OSC as long as you just license the virtual OSC as you normally would, as long as you have software assurance. So essentially, that's kind of the key with regard to kind of the SQL Server 2022 updates in the product terms. But I think, William, we were just saying even before like our session, like there's a whole plethora of, additional Microsoft Azure benefits that have come along with SQL Server 2022. But I'll probably let you kind of segue into what's going on in what's been mentioned for Azure.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So there's two particular changes for SQL, which is running in Azure for this month. So there's two ways of doing it in Azure. So it's SQL managed instances and SQL virtual machines. So like the traditional on-prem, but moved into Azure. So, and the main changes to the failover rights, which have been applied or updated for both deployment options. And so within Azure, there's failover entitlements for the managed instances. They've introduced one geo secondary specifically for disaster recovery purposes. So essentially a secondary location for backups and DR. And for the SQL VMs, there's two additional options. So one's a failover OSE for any purpose, including high availability. And the second is another failover OSE specifically for disaster recovery purposes. And so it's essentially taken away the licensing aspect of those secondary and tertiary instances within Azure. And you only pay for the compute and the storage and other associated services, but not for the licensing metrics on that. You're also allowed to carry out maintenance without breaking those product term rules on the secondary and tertiary instances of SQL. And I suppose the one condition is that you got to have the same number of vCores in both the primary workload as well as the failover or the secondary workload, which is providing that DR benefit. So it's just extending, I suppose, the scale of what you can do with SQL in Azure without having to double up on licenses.
It's well worth kind of doing, I think, a separate session, isn't it, Carl, on SQL and Azure based on all the new ways of basically opening up using kind of SQL and Azure, which previously possibly was a
restrictive, I
blocker
suppose, in
for
terms of
customers.
cost.
Yeah.
I think a separate session, a deep dive into SQL Server 2022 licensing is well worth doing. I think it's probably the one Microsoft product that has the licensing models have evolved at pace since showing my age now in the world of licensing, but since 2008, should I say, we've seen constant changes in SQL Server every 2 odd years, that can have had a material impact on an organization. And I think it's like one of these products that, because of the frequency of licensing changes, what can actually end up happening is that sometimes organizations will apply the old licensing rules to newer licenses, and then all of a sudden, fall outside of the product term. So it's definitely worth having another closer look at all things SQL over the coming weeks, so we can kind of get down into the detail on that a little bit more.
And
definitely. I
it's
think
it's
there's
the release that I've heard customers actually get excited about.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
that
Yeah.
they,
definitely.
do you know the way like sometimes with the likes of Windows Server, customers will wait, maybe 2 years
Mhm.
or whatever to go to the current kind of version. But I've already heard of some customers like looking forward to moving to SQL 2022 next year. So that's pretty amazing.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably also worth mentioning right now, some price increases also coming down the
Yeah.
track in 2022 as well. So
Yeah.
some other compelling reasons there to perhaps invest in new licenses in the near future before those changes take effect.
And
Good
that's
call.
worldwide for SQL, 1st of January 2023, excluding Azure deployments, but any on-prem, there's a worldwide increase of 10%.
Very good. So I think that about wraps things up for this month's Microsoft product term updates. If you have any questions, as always, do feel free to reach out to the SAM team at version 1. We're delighted to handle any Microsoft licensing queries you may have, or any other vendor licensing queries that you may have also. So until the January update, thanks for attending, and we look forward to presenting to you on the January 2023 Microsoft licensing term update session. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.